In Season 3 of Black Clover Mobile, we're going to be getting a new Charlotte, Fuego, and Jack the Ripper, but which one of these is actually the best? But for us to actually know who is the best, we got to take a look at their kits. So starting off, we have Charlotte, who is a blue supporter, and she has some absolutely amazing stats as her speed can go all the way up to 126 speed, and this is amazing because it makes her the joint fastest character in the game alongside Vengeance as well, which means that she's going to be heavily competing with the likes of Vengeance and also Ghosh as that blue supporter. With her skill 1 Rapid Thorns, which is a single target skill with 80% of attack and magic attack as damage, you will be able to apply a counter attack to the ally with the highest attack for one turn. And with all this extra speed that she has, you'll be able to get that off as soon as you possibly can, once you've used your other skills, that is. And speaking of other skills, we have a skill 2, which is a 2-turn cooldown skill, which on base will just grant all of your allies a 40% increased all attack buff for 2 turns. And then when you actually have a skill page, you can also then grant all of your allies total defense, which is a really handy buff as it allows all of the damage that your allies will take will be blocked damage. And not only does a skill page give those really good effects on a skill 2, it also has a really good passive skill, as basically whoever is wearing the skill page is attacked, but in this case it will be Charlotte. You'll have a 20% or 100% chance to go ahead and recover 1 skill point, which will then actually bring me on to her special skill, which is Clover Academy's Instructor's Skills, and this will basically have a 60% chance to grant all of your allies a counter attack for 1 turn, and once you get to level 5 you can increase it from a 60% chance all the way to a 100% chance of it happening. And this will be really handy as it's essentially Vengeance's ultimate, but you give the counter attack to all of your allies instead of only just one, but you're kind of losing the damage reduction. And this is amazing, especially if you have characters like Noelle who have AoE counters, or even just with any other DPS character like Julius who will have really high single target damage when they counter. It'll be really good. And then her enhanced passive, or the passive that you get with actual dupes, you'll be able to grant 1 skill point whenever attacked. And then once you get to 5 dupes, you'll actually not only be able to gain 1 special point every time you're attacked, but you'll also be able to increase the duration of counterattacks that you give with your skill 1 and also your special skill, I believe. But this is just a rough translation of the Korean version, so it could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And then finally, her unique passive is actually amazing, as basically whenever all of your allies belong to the technique typing, or this will be the actual blue typing in the game, you'll be able to inflict silence for 1 turn on the enemy team at the start of battle. And if you don't necessarily know what silence does, it basically stops all of your enemies from using their skill 2s for 1 turn. And then moving on to the next character, we have Fuego Vermilion, and he is a red attacker. And starting off with all of his stats, and he just has a pretty average speed stat of 103, which is unfortunate, as it would have been nice if he was a lot quicker. But his other stats are actually relatively decent, as in terms of magic attack, and also just regular attack as well, he's got some pretty decently high stats, as he has 12,879 magic attack and 4,595 regular attack. And then moving on to his skill 1, Blazing Passion. This is a single target skill 1 with 90% of attack and magic attack as damage ratios, and all this skill will do, it will just basically have a guaranteed chance to inflict burn on an enemy, which will then deal continuous damage for 2 turns. And then moving on to his skill 2, Zealous Instruction. This is another single target skill 2 with a 3-turn cooldown, and this has damage ratios of 100% of attack and magic attack, but this time it does a little bit more than his skill 2 does, as it will also inflict burn on an enemy, which will then deal continuous damage for 2 turns, but then it will also dispel an enemy's barrier before attacking if they are already inflicted with a certain burn status. And then once you have his skill page, you can enhance his skill 2 to allow his skill 2 to also inflict another burn on a random enemy, which will deal continuous damage for 2 turns as well. Which then brings me onto his skill page, Intensive Training, which as not only does it then give his skill 2 another chance to burn enemies as well, it also gives him a 10% or 100% chance to, when attacking, to gain a 5% or a 25% increased damage bar for every burn effect on the enemy. So considering burn stacks can stack up to 3 times, you can possibly get a total of a 75% damage increase, which is really good. And then moving on to his special skill, Lion King's Teaching Philosophy. This is a special skill which is an AoE special skill, and will have 70% of attack and magic attack as damage. And although those damage ratios aren't anything too crazy, trust me, this is where all of his damage is going to come from. As essentially what this skill will actually do, it will basically deal a bunch of increased damage depending on how many burns all of your enemies will actually have. As it says, based on the number of burn stacks that are currently affecting your enemy, you'll inflict an increased damage taken debuff on them before you attack. As for example, when you have 1 stack of burn on an enemy, they will take 20% increased damage from this special skill. If you have 2 stacks, this is 75% increased damage taken debuff. Or if you have 3 stacks of burns on these characters, you will then be able to deal an additional 220% damage to that certain enemy that has those 3 burn debuffs. And once you're able to proc that 3+ stacks of burn to then get that extra 220% extra damage, you're going to do amazing amounts of damage. But then after using this special skill, you will then go ahead and get rid of all of the burn stacks from that certain enemy target. And then what's even better about this special skill is that you'll also dispel all the barriers from the target before attacking. attacking, which is really, really good. And then moving on to his enhanced passive, once you get 2 dupes on him, you'll be able to deal a 5% increased damage bonus for every burn stack on an enemy. Once you actually get it to the 5th star, and once you've used 5 more dupes on him, you can go ahead and increase that from 5% all the way to 15% for every burn effect that they have. And then finally, we have his unique passive, or his LR passive, which is literally just Lick's passive, as basically whenever his HP drops below 30%, he will gain immortality for 1 turn, and this can only trigger once per battle. And then the final Season 3 character, we have Jack the Ripper, who is a green attacker this time, and his stats are also okay. They're nothing like crazy, nothing too special. So he has 104 speed, which makes him 1 speed faster than pretty much most DPSs in the game, which is somewhat okay, but it's nothing too amazing. And then he's got okay offensive stats with 12,799 attack, with 3,599 magic attack as well, which is okay. It's nothing too crazy, nothing too bad, nothing too great. And speaking of nothing too bad, but also not too great either, is going to be his skill 1 3-point slash, which will be a single target skill with 90% of attack and magic attack as damage. And what the skill will do, it will inflict the bleed debuff, which will deal continuous damage for 2 turns. But what this skill also does, it will also give you a 50% chance to stun a certain enemy that you attack with this skill if they are already inflicted with the bleed debuff. And then we have his skill 2, I'll slice you up, which is a single target skill 2 with 80% of attack and magic attack as damage ratios, and is on a 2-turn cooldown. And what this will do is basically it'll give him a bunch of different buffs, as it'll give him 1 stack of miscalculation to himself, which basically says whenever using your special move, you'll additionally attack a random target for every stack of miscalculation that you actually have, which will stack up all the way to 3 times. And then not only that, it'll give you a level 2 penetration buff for 2 turns, as well as a level 2 accuracy buff for 2 turns as well. And then finally, we have his special skill, which is honestly a very quirky, very weird special skill, as it's a single target special skill with 50% of attack and magic attack as damage. And what this will basically do, as mentioned before, you'll perform an additional attack for every stack of miscalculation or miscalculated, which will deal additional damage equal to 80% of attack and magic attack to random enemies. And then not only that, it will then also go ahead and inflict a stun status element on an enemy for 1 turn. But what is also very nice is also when you have his skill page, as Jack the Ripper's skill page will go ahead and enhance his actual special skill. And this enhancement will basically give his special skill the effect of whenever miscalculated was triggered 3 times in the same turn, that last trigger or that last hit of damage from the miscalculation will benefit from a 500% increased damage buff, which then actually brings me onto his skill page, Unique Teacher, as not only will it also give all the buffs for the special skill, it will also give himself a 35% to 100% chance to grant a 20% increased damage dealt buff before he ever attacks. And then finally, we have all of his passives, and starting off with his enhanced passive, which will basically just apply 1 stack of miscalculation to himself at the start of a battle. And then once you get that all the way to 5 stars, you can go ahead and increase that all the way to 2. But then finally, his unique passive basically says whenever he's attacked, he'll grant himself a 20% increased stamina bonus. So out of all of these 3 new characters that will be getting very soon, who is actually the best one of them all? Well, I mean, it has to be Charlotte, man. She is amazing. She's going to be really, really good. I think when she releases in however many days time, the mono blue team is going to be running absolutely rampant on Arena, and is also going to be very, very useful for PvE and stuff like that, as she has a great amount of value, giving counter attacks, all attack bonuses. She can give damage reduction with a combined attack, which is also useful. So there you have it for today's video. Overall, Charlotte is definitely the best character in Season 3, at least in my opinion. And if you enjoyed this video or you found it useful, then don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below whether it actually helped you or not. And without further ado, I will see you in the next video. Peace!